the equipment, but we're really very fortunate that we have a lot of people that are truly interested in taking part in a book study. So I have never done one before. I know there are a lot of principals that do this regularly, so bear with me. This is my first time, and I just really felt compelled with everything that's going on here to look at this particular book as our starting point, to kind of give us a background into the visual thinking in Project Zero, because it seems to be something that you're excited about, the kids are really engaged in. So let's start. I handed out some notes to begin with, and kind of just took you through that first part. There's a lot of meat in that first part, and I think some of you probably felt that. I had to read it twice, to be honest with you, to really delve into it and highlight. So, and please forgive me, I use my e-reader all the time more than I do the actual book. So I tried to correlate my notes. I gave you a lot of notes, and I'm not just going to go straight by the notes, just like you wouldn't in a classroom. But I wanted to give you what I felt were the basic tenets of how this all started and the belief systems behind the major contributors to Project Zero, which we were very fortunate to be able to meet at our last Project Zero conference. So it was exciting. The one thing I wanted to look at is what really is the definition of intellectual character, which is the basis upon what all of this revolves around, is a change in thought process of how we teach because of looking at that definition of what we feel is intellectual character. Not just smart, not just intelligence, but an actual blending of intelligence and character, which we hear so much about, even from the parental components when we were looking at this,
Definitely.
is looking at the character of a person. And I think that's sometimes the missing component in what we do every day when we're just going through the motions, is how are we developing the actual character of this student and this child that we have, and also be cognizant of their intellect. And that's a broad term, and there's a lot of, as you saw in here, a lot of controversy. So how did you feel about the definitions? Because there were basically two big ones that came out. One was from Perkins and one was from Ritchhart. And I asked you in your notes to compare those. How did that work for you? What did you find in your comparison? Anybody want to talk? Share? Come on.
For me, just when we were getting this started, I hadn't, it's not that I've ever really thought of intelligence as being fixed, but in terms of what we can be doing in the classroom to develop intelligence, to develop acting smart. I think that was one of the terms in the book. I'd not thought of that before. What messages am I sending each day to my kids? So for me, that's kind of the burning question in terms of what I'm doing in the classroom. What am I introducing to the kids? How do I look at intelligence? How do I look at whatever acting smart looks like? What does it look like? So for me, it's sort of exploring that in terms of my expectations toward my kids.
Did any of you relate with that whole aspect of, you always think, and we always have this debate every time we look at kids, when we try to, especially when we go through that whole area of looking at a child for gifted, okay? And that really came to mind. The one that answers, we always want them to be the perfect one, the ones that answer the questions first, when really, and we start to think about it, a lot of what we're doing, we fall into that trap, but really, we all can say it, and we've said it how many times before, those are not necessarily your most, you're not necessarily brightest, but they're not necessarily the ones that are going to in the long term be the real successful people.
I think there's a difference between like studious, which is what you would describe
Exactly.
that student, than someone that we're saying is gifted or has a developed intellectual character.
I agree.
Yeah.
One of the things, I don't know exactly where it falls in your notes.
it didn't matter. Those were just
This is just
guidelines. Yeah.
discussion
What I
time.
made the most connection with was curiosity.
Yes.
And, you know, I can relate that on a personal basis to some things that we've done, and a person who, we've seen more things because one person is very curious about things. And your experience is enriched because of one person's curiosity and other people's willingness to go, okay, well, let's investigate that and see where that goes.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that was really shown when you did the whole kindergarten, that the bears.
Yeah.
I mean, it just all kind of tumbled
Yeah.
one after another, which is great. That's where we want them to go. Lead them to their own sense of learning, which is wonderful.
I think they'll remember that particular project for a long time
Yes.
versus the one we're doing this week, which is like, it's kind of hard to throw anything into our story this week, but, you know, it was good.
Well, then, do